Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
And welcome to the Investor Coaching Show. I am Paul Winkler. Ira works here with me. Fresh back from being on the road all night long. Okay, Lionel. Dedicated to getting into the Investor Coaching Show for you, and Evan Barnard here as well. Not on the road all night long.
All night long.
Is there a correlation to that in the 85 mile an hour comment you made?
I don't know.
It might.
I think it may be highly correlated.
You know,
the covariance.
I'll tell you what, you hit some of these potholes on 65 going 80.
You don't want to do that.
Hadn't.
No, you don't want to do that, do you?
No.
Man. Okay, so one of the things that hits the media quite a lot is the tendency of politicians to, be involved in the stock market more than necessarily maybe they should be. And I want to put this into context in terms of what does that mean to you, me, and everybody else out there, and just do a little tutorial on that. So, Leviticus, if you could play this, there's a little segment from CNBC, I think that was instructive regarding a Fed meeting and some things that happened right after. Go ahead.
There's also this Politico report you were watching about Powell.
Yeah, yesterday Powell apparently did have a meeting, closed-door meeting with Democrats on the House Financial Services Committee. That's not unusual. He goes up to the Hill a lot, Powell, to talk to both sides. But what some people are focused on is the fact that whatever it may be he said, and we have at least some quotes from one rep who was in the meeting, that they're going to be waiting for PCE to give them more intel, but didn't get particularly excited about the hot CPI number. And the market yesterday, while it did end down sharply, rebounded right around the time that meeting ended. We all know that House members do like to trade stocks. So just interesting going around that story. At least we do know the meeting took place, but we obviously don't.
Just another reason they shouldn't be able to trade stocks,
don't know
perhaps.
what was said or anything. But when you do look at a minute by minute of yesterday's S&P, we'll see. So they're right around 3 o'clock, 3 or so, a rebound.
Yeah, so isn't that interesting? The Fed chairman is responsible for coming up with interest rates. When you're dealing with meeting reserve requirements and what banks charge each other, they come up with this, and they're giving you a number on what interest rates are going to be. And a lot of people look at that and say, are they setting interest rates? And the reality of it is, no, they're not. They're setting one interest rate, but the market looks at them because they have access to a lot of data that might be helpful in determining where the economy is going to go. So as I did in a previous week, I was showing how short-term interest rates were actually leading the way and telling the Fed what to do based on what was going on at that particular point in time. So number one, I want to get that out of the way, that it's not that they're controlling all the interest rates, that everything is, when you're looking at mortgage rates, but they do have a lot of information that people use to determine what interest rate to charge each other. So he's talking about PCE, which is personal consumption expenditures, is basically what that stands for. So you're looking at this data coming out, and there was a private closed-door meeting, as he's saying, with just Democrats, with the Fed chairman, and all of a sudden they come out and they're recognizing that maybe there's not going to be the interest rate changes so they're trading stocks. And he makes the point that they like to trade stocks. Politicians like to trade stocks based on, information that they get to know that maybe not everybody else knows right away.
And would go to jail for using.
Yeah. No, so as an investor, your reaction may be, that's it. I told you the stock market was rigged. I told you the stock market was rigged. And, the reality of it is that when we look at this, let me just put this into context. As an investor, number one, when you market time, which is basically what these politicians would be doing with this information, they would be market timing. You have to be right twice when you get in, when you get out. Maybe you got some information on the way in that's helpful. But the reality of it is most of the information is news that drives the markets. And if you look at the biggest news of the past 20 years, it wasn't interest rate increases or decreases. It was wars. It was planes flying into buildings. It was banking collapses and things that even the politicians wouldn't have known. Now, there are certain politicians that have been accused of having better information than others and really making a lot of money on stock trades. And in some cases, yeah. But there are a lot of other things that they've made money on as well. But here's the thing. As an investor, if you look back, and this is one of the reasons that I set up the very first workshop that we all teach 20-something years ago, I started putting things in that workshop, and it all came from a trip to the library one day. It was the most fruitful trip to the library I have ever had, where I found articles dating back to the 1930s, 1940s, I jumped to the 1970s, then I jumped to the 1980s, then I was jumping in the 1990s, and I found article after article after article. And the reason I did it the way I did it was because this same thing, this same fear was consuming people, and it was causing them to not get in the market or get out of the market or do what I would consider the right thing with their money and invest prudently.
Yeah.
And what I did was I was looking for articles to show how this lack of information or this imbalance of information has always been with us. And you've always had people doing things that were just not quite right. You look at different things that people have done, whether it be politicians, whether it be insiders, whether it be whatever. And there have always been bad actors in the stock market, was my point. And I wanted to make the point that regardless of how many bad actors you had and people doing things wrong, that markets grew, literally from $1 growing to what? $14,000 in large U.S. stocks, right? And, over $100,000 in small value stocks. Regardless of the bad actors, if you were an investor that got in and held and didn't panic and didn't, try to gamble with your own money, you did just fine as an investor, was my point.
Right.
You can get all caught up in the emotions of this person's doing something and they're getting away with something and the market's rigged and all of that stuff. You can get away. But if you look at the wealthiest people in the world and you look at the growth of their wealth versus the stock market, most of the time, it's significantly below. And if anybody should have access to inside information, should be able to game the system, it should be the wealthy. Mm-hmm. So as an investor, this is all the more reason not to try to figure out what's going to happen next. Where are things going to go? What's this politician do? Should it be illegal? Should they not be able to do it? Well, that's what they said in that little clip, and I agree with them. Maybe they just shouldn't be able to do it. I totally agree with that one.
For sure. Earlier we were talking about the Super Bowl and the gambling that went on and how that relates, to the desire to trade and transact. Uh-huh. And, you really see that same phenomenon of this frustration with the market is rigged, I need to stay out of the game or something like that with the sports betting. And, even more so this season, just because I've been aware of it, hearing news stories and so forth of, well, it's rigged. Well, the referees are doing this. Well, Vegas is controlling the game, or the NFL only wants this particular team to, it's the same phenomenon. Right. And a lot of times it depends on, if you were, betting on the 49ers, well, it's rigged because the Chiefs won. Well, if you're a Chiefs fan, but you were betting they would win by 7 and they only won by 3, well, it's rigged. They didn't want us to beat the spread. Everybody has a reason to find distrust if they're looking for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And if you just, in this case, avoid gambling, that's a good idea there. But to your point, Paul, if I own the market, if I stay long term, I really don't have to pay attention to all the shenanigans. I can be upset as a citizen, but as an investor, you just really don't have to worry about it.
And we do know that when it comes to gambling, that they just want to make sure that you're playing because the odds are in their favor.
Right.
What is it that Burton Malkiel said, or is John Bogle? It's the stock market is a casino with the odds in your favor. Which of those two guys, was it Malkiel or Bogle that said
Bogle,
that?
I think.
I think you're right. It might have been Bogle now that I think about it, but it's, it's in your favor. In essence, if we look at it, you're investing, and if you just hang on, it's up and down. It's random. There's randomness to it, but the odds are in your favor because you have people running companies whose sole desire is to make the value of that stock go up.
Yeah.
But the people who are actually saying the market's rigged are people who really do not understand it.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to the Foundations Workshop that we teach, that you created 22 years ago, you learn that there are two ways to invest, and one of them is built on pure science. Mm-hmm. The other way is, built on speculating and gambling. And you could say, well, it's rigged, and therefore I'm going to invest in this or I'm not going to invest at all. But there are ways to build a portfolio and totally understand what's going on, that you can feel confident that it's not rigged, because it's not rigged.
Well, if you own a company, would you say that when I go to work every day, I'm gambling? I own this company. And when you own stocks, that's what you do. You own companies. Now, you can approach it as a gambler, and you can buy and sell. But basically, when you sell one company to buy another company in its place, you are literally betting that company that you sold is going to go down. The other person is betting that it's going to go up. But you're exchanging companies with each other. Right. It's like, I'm going to sell my financial planning practice this week, and I am going to buy the hardware store across town. And then next week, I'm going to buy back my financial planning practice while you buy your hardware store back from me. Yeah, you buy a donut, and you go, what? Who would do that?
Right.
Well, you think about it, that's what we're doing.
Thinking about your comment, Ira, it just struck me because you said when you created the Foundations Workshop 22 years ago, the data has been updated. The articles have been updated.
Yeah. Science
has another 22 years to back up what was created 22 years ago.
Right.
But it's the same message. That's really unheard of in our world.
Yeah.
Now, it still works, and science is still science. The laws of physics don't cease to exist just because the president is in one party or the other. But, it just kind of struck me
my first book,
it's the same deal.
Well, my first book, it was funny because I had a client that's been a long-time client came in this week. And I was looking for something to explain taking income from a portfolio. And that concept we were talking about earlier, Ira, where you say, I'm going to take out 4% out of a portfolio. And if the portfolio goes up 10, then I've got 6 left to go back to the principal. So I was helping her understand that's how we help protect ourselves from inflation. And I was running around trying to find the data, right? So I could just show her, right? So I grabbed my book, Above the Maddening Crowd, because there happened to be a copy of that, which was written in 2007.
Yeah.
And I've opened it up and I showed it to her. And she goes, isn't it funny that you haven't had to read, that it's basically you can still use this book.
Right.
And that was exactly the point you made. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let me give you an analogy that I was thinking about yesterday, because, I like to teach with analogies. Mm-hmm. Whoever gets to know me knows that I like to cook. I like cooking competition shows. I am not at that level. I will be the first one to admit that. Right. I will not beat Bobby Flay, okay?
I don't even know who that is.
He's a celebrity.
I was waiting for that.
Whatever.
He's a celebrity chef. I knew you didn't know who he is.
You know how I am.
But here's the thing. It blows my mind how these celebrity chefs, and I'll do it in the kitchen as well, they don't measure anything. They just pour. You see them pouring in that's a half a bag of sugar. What are you doing? Or that's way too much salt. You know what you're doing.
That's too much.
But
How do you know it's too much?
I'll pull out different spices and just try putting things together.
Yeah.
And most of the time, my food comes out pretty good. I have to admit, it does.
You're gonna have to. I need to try this stuff. I have not.
But so I would call those people. And here's my analogy. So you have cooks, right? And then you have bakers.
Uh-huh.
Now, with baking, that's a real science. You can't say, well, I'm going to put in an extra half a teaspoon of yeast. Or I'm going to add a little bit more sugar.
Okay.
Okay?
Because it could really screw it up.
Baking is really a science.
Great metaphor.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I could add a little bit more cumin, or I could add a little bit more pepper, or a little Tabasco sauce or something. I cooked a lasagna with chorizo one day, okay? And
with
my
what?
guests, my guests loved it. They were like, "Oh my God, this is so good!" I just wanted to try something different.
Is that a spice?
It's
a sausage.
It's a sausage.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm clueless.
But here's the thing, okay? So you can put together your portfolio like, you know what? I'll throw in a little bit more foreign this time, or I'm going to overweight it. I don't think the market's going to do good, so I'm going to overweight it with some bonds. But I want those high yield bonds. You don't really understand them.
Right.
Or you can have the science of investing with empirically tested portfolios.
Yeah.
You know, based on Nobel Prize academic research.
Right.
Some of it going back to 1952.
Yeah, and it's not just back tested. There's logic behind it,
Right.
You know, like goalpost effect.
Right.
You know, for example,
Yeah.
you know,
So-
or what, you know.
So with that science, with the baking, you can be a lot more confident what the outcome will be, as opposed to, well, I don't think it tastes like it should, or and a lot of these, they have like these two celebrity chefs during these competitions, and they'll have a blind taste test. And one chef wins over the other. Now, I'm sure both of the dishes came out absolutely superb. But these judges, I mean, they'll say, well, this one wasn't crispy enough, or this one could use a little bit more acid, or this could use a little bit more of this, and you won because of that. And it just blows me away watching these people cook. You know, they're saying, you know, they're given, sometimes they're given an ingredient. And they have to create a whole dish around this ingredient. And you're watching them add all these things without measuring anything else. But it's way different than baking a cake.
Right.
And we bake cakes here.
So I like that because, you know, the metaphor really works if you think about, well, what was the cheapest ingredient you put in the cake? What was I don't know, what would be the cheapest ingredient that you...
I don't bake.
It'd be, well, by volume, it'd be flour. Would be cheaper than.
Okay, there you
whatever
go.
else you
Okay, so
could.
let's just run with that.
Yeah.
So we're going to use way too much flour because it's the cheapest ingredient.
Yes.
Would be like, you guys see where I'm going?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do totally.
You look at, you know, like target date funds or portfolios put together by typical advisors. What do? They throw the cheapest thing in there. Large U.S. stocks overweights the portfolio until you know.
And your cake
die
tastes
of
like
flower
chalk.
pours. Yeah. Thank you. Very good. Excellent metaphor. Paul Winkler, investor coach. Yeah, I mean, you look at how they put these portfolios together and they put too much of something in it because, hey, you know what? We can market that it's cheaper. You can make this cake way cheaper if you put all flour in it. Tastes like garbage. There you go. Paul Winkler, investor coaching show, Ira Work, with a wonderful metaphor.
You got to wonder how they sell hamburgers at McDonald's for 99 cents.
I did, yeah, I don't even know. Thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Podcast. Now, you may be one of these people that's been listening and realizing, wow, investing, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and financial planning, tax laws constantly changing, and recognizing that maybe you might need some help in this area, but you don't want just anybody to help you out. So we have 10 offices in the Middle Tennessee area, and everything we do is fee only. We align our interests with your interests. So you can get an initial 15-minute phone call with any one of our offices just by going to paulwinkler.com/call. That's it. Every one of the offices is run by somebody with 20 plus years experience. They're all degreed planners. They all have academic backgrounds in investing, and you can get the help that you need. So if you want to set up a complimentary phone consultation, just go to paulwinkler.com/call. And we look forward to seeing you soon. All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler, Ira Work, and Evan Barnard. Cost of owning a car is getting painful, according to the Wall Street Journal. Gas prices are in check, but nearly everything else related to your vehicle getting more expensive. So they're saying that, you know, if you look at car insurance premiums rose 20.6% in January, up from a year earlier.
Yikes.
Ouch. Trip to the mechanic, price of parking space, highway tolls are also up, offsetting savings from the big exceptions, falling gas prices. Ballooning costs for the car and the driveway can squeeze budgets, and they says that transportation is Americans' biggest expense. Hard to cut, though. And apparently, auto loans, you got interest rates up there. That's another problem that we're dealing with. For people that borrow, this is another good reason not to borrow to buy a car. Have a sinking fund, put money aside. Even in retirement, this is something I've had to tell a lot of people recently, is when you're working, hopefully you save money, put it aside, build up a little fund on the side, then you buy your car for cash, and then you start saving for the next car. And that way you don't have to go and finance it. And people say, well, what do you do in retirement? Because, you might need a car and markets may happen to be down. So I might have somebody pull a little bit more out of their investment portfolio every month and then put some of it aside for car purchases or roof, repairs or, those types of things. But they're saying that the annual cost of owning a new car, including expenses such as gas and insurance, climbed $12,000 in 2023, up from $10,000 in 2022, latest estimates from AAA. And this says new price car price themselves only went up 0.7%. But then you also, I don't know, that might be skewed because they've got a lot of electric cars that nobody wanted. And that may have brought that number down just a little bit. I don't know, guys, if you have looked at this or had anybody complain about it, thinking about buying a new car. Is it a good time to buy a new car? I've had some people ask me that question.
I know I had just seen a news story. I didn't read through it, so this was just the headline, but that used car prices were coming down. Because during some of the supply constraints, used cars were almost more than new cars.
Right.
Because they had parts and you could get them.
Well, and the chips too, because you had the new cars didn't have the chips for like a heated seat or, lumbar support or whatever. And some people wanted the old cars and there was more demand for them because they had the little bells and whistles like that in them, but the new cars didn't have them. So they're like, heck, I'll just buy an old car or a used car that has, the mirrors that move and, the heated steering wheel and all of that stuff. And, I'll forego the brand new one. So I wonder if that's part of it, because maybe the chips, because the chip manufacturers, good grief, some of them, that has been, don't go and chase this and go, geez, I want to go invest in a company like that. But NVIDIA, if you look at the price of that stock, it's like meteoric. And a lot of it had to do with the lack of chips. And because now what's happening is we've got new chip manufacturers coming on board in different parts of the country. So go figure, man.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No, but I've had people ask me, is this a year to replace the car?
Right.
And maybe, I would just keep an eye out. But, a lot of people have been not wanting to go with the all electric because of, the cost of battery replacement is just ridiculous.
And then what was it? I might have even said something last week. I think BMW is abandoning EVs and they're starting to look at hydrogen.
Are they doing the hydrogen? Because
I think so.
Do you see the Toyota? There was something out there about Toyota and ammonia.
Yeah, someone was.
Because there's a lot of
someone
hydrogen.
Mentioned that Tuesday at the meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did mention that, didn't I? Yeah, so to me, it's interesting because it doesn't burn as fast. It's not as combustible, so they have to mix it with other types of fuels. But, I don't know. Sometimes I'll see these videos and go, is this for real? You kind of wonder, but it looked pretty doggone official. It was something that they were playing around with. So it'd be interesting to see if that becomes something. But hydrogen, I know that we've talked about that before, the possibility of actually having that be the driving force. And I don't know. There's a lot of fake news out there. You got to watch it.
Right.
Did you guys see
or even well-meaning news that's just not true?
Would you see there's somebody at exactly. Did you see there are posts of somebody had used AI to put Biden and Trump in pictures together?
Yes, I
did you see that?
They were like roasted marshmallows in one of the scenes. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So it was really good. They're like having a big time together, and
that became a topic at Davos.
Oh, did it?
This past week.
Oh, really?
At the World Economic Forum. And I forget the number of signers, but basically a lot of the tech companies and even Sam Altman had delivered a talk there, and they're, how they're going to accomplish this, no idea, but they're committing to doing everything they can to prevent deep fakes from swaying the election and from allowing content and so forth. I mean, that was actually a big topic of conversation.
Yeah. And there are ways to detect whether it is. And I think that's going to be the key. Because you can get really worked up about it and really scared about it.
Right.
But then you think, well, you're assuming that it's going to come to fruition and that nobody will have an answer to it.
Right.
And I think that is a mistake because it always has been a mistake. Anything, I think back in history, the things that we've been scared of and the things I've talked about, good grief, just on this show over 22 years, things that people have been scared of. This is going to happen. Oh my goodness. And then I go, well,
global cooling.
Well, right, sure, yeah.
Global cooling in whatever 70s or 80s, we're all going to freeze to death.
That's right. We're going to have a global ice age. Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
But what we find is that typically there's an answer from the mind of some brilliant person on how to answer some of these things that we fear. Because you know what? If a lot of people fear it, there's money to be made there.
For sure.
And that's capitalism. There is money to be made solving a problem. And fear is a huge problem. What we're scared of, whether it be diseases, whether it be economic catastrophe, whether it be some kind of an issue with a foreign government that is threatening.
Right.
Think back to Reagan, Star Wars. People were worried about governments having nuclear missiles and being able to launch them. And then you say, well, wait a minute, we got a way to work on this. We got this program.
Yeah.
And whether it was how work, a lot of this stuff, technology that's out there that we don't even know about. When I think about, people commenting on what the government's doing, and I go, the government's doing a lot of stuff that I don't have a clue what they're doing. The reality
Area
of it is
51, man.
yeah, and you hear there are things to be fearful of, but reality of it is there's probably somebody working on the solution to the problem.
Oh, absolutely.
I tend to be an internal optimist. It's like our self-talk. I was watching a video I sent it to my family. I said, this is it, guys. The stuff you say to yourself can really, really, and this guy, he's a pastor psychologist, and he just talks about the stuff that we say to ourselves. Watch how you talk to yourself. Watch what you talk to yourself about. Watch the things that you're going, I'm so scared about this. I'm so afraid of this. Watch it, because that stuff you keep repeating yourself, it really gets into you. And it can drag you down.
I was sharing that with a group the other day that you own what you confess. You own what you confess.
It's very similar to something that I want to hear what you mean by that, because it's something similar to what I say to people.
For example, if you look at and say, "Well, I can't remember names."
Oh, I got you.
Or I'm computer illiterate.
Right.
So, or my body's breaking down.
Yeah.
So what you confess, we talk about, in one of our workshops, we talk about language, that everything is done through language.
Right.
What you say.
Right.
So if you keep saying my body is breaking down, as opposed to I'm going to get up and go to the gym and work out, you're just going to sit at home and your body will break down.
Right.
But you're in that mental mindset that your body is breaking down.
Or you can say, I can't do this. And then you add one word to it, and it really, it's magic. I can't do this yet. So it's
unless.
But that's like a very, very big thing, is that what you're hearing the words.
Right.
I'm bad at names. Well, there are ways to actually remember certain things. And you know this from your training.
Right.
There are little tricks that you can develop.
Sure.
That it becomes easier to remember
association
names.
Or whatever.
You start going to the gym. Now you start working out on your body, and you become stronger. And my mom is an example. She said, computers ruined this world. as she sits with her iPhone in her hand, talking to her grandchildren in Boston, New York, and California, and sending them little emojis every morning to brighten up their day.
Right, that's exactly. You can use it for good.
Right. So,
or you can use it to work against you.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
So like, they used to call the television the devil's box or something.
There was an idiot box is what I always heard it referred to.
Okay. But yet you think about how easily we can tune in and, whether it's fake news or real news or somewhere in between, we can still watch and get some knowledge about what's going on in our local community, around the world. So, if it wasn't for the TV, most people would have never heard about the terrorist attack by Hamas in Israel.
Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. You want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. You can watch some of the videos there, and if you're not already a client, you can set up a free initial consultation. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.